Part 6. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 51. Chapter 51 Chapter 51 He will sacrifice his life for the sake of being young. Boss, you have to believe me, I really don't know. And Nangsuan defended himself forcefully. Fujianexai lit up a cigarette and puffed out a puff of smoke. His voice was cold to the bone. You can handle the project that Chang Yi is working on. And Nangsuan. He was wrong. He was too naive to try to hide the truth in front of a person who could see through the truth of everything. Yi Changji gave him a sympathetic look with a hint of joy and said thank you with his mouth. And Nangsuan. Boss, I will be 18 years old in a short period of time. Let me test out the little girl's taste and see what she likes. Yi Changji was trying to figure out what to give her. After all, it is the coming of age gift of 18. And Nangsuan. Someone who was saying that they were too pampered just now, what is your situation now? I'll ask you questions when you get back, Fujianexai responded. Boss, what are you going to do for your coming of age ceremony? If you haven't thought about it yet, you can leave it to me. And Nangsuan spoke enthusiastically, lamenting how quickly time passed. The little girl followed Fujianexai with a pair of fierce eyes and a round face. At that time, they all thought that the boss was crazy and had a little kid by his side. Facts have proved that the boss is indeed crazy. Since the 18-year-old Fujianexai raised Zhang Xiao, the nightlife has changed. When she was afraid of the dark, I had to go back to accompany her. The weekend break time has changed too. When she had to go back to make up for her classes, even dating girls' time has become, and I have to take hours to go out and play. In the end, they all accompanied her. From then on, it was not that Jiangxi was beside Fujianxiu, but they were the ones behind Jiangxi. They watched the little girl grow up, and their love was sincere. So from the moment he knew about Fujianexai's feelings, he was thinking about how to make this little girl slowly learn to accept it without getting hurt. 18 years came too fast. No, I'm already preparing. Fujianexai drank the remaining wine in the glass, turned around and left. Yi Changji was about to follow him and leave together but was stopped by An Nangsuan. Old Yi, why are you following me? Come back and drink and chat with me. Boss, I don't worry about drinking. Yi Changji was worried that he would drive back. And Nangsuan patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. No, he won't drive back. He is almost 18 years old, and he won't let anything happen to him. Yi Changji was confused. What does this have to do with childhood? Ananxian. You said it has something to do with childhood. And Nangsuan thought for a while and then mentioned it. Childhood is the boss's life. The boss will sacrifice his life for the sake of the child. He will not miss the child's 18-year-old coming-of-age ceremony. Nonsense, I don't want to miss the coming-of-age ceremony when I was young. The little girl has finally grown up. Thinking about it, I still think it was too fast. When the little girl was a child, her chubby face was like a hamster when she was angry. It was so cute. But now he is getting bigger and bigger, and he is as sinister as the boss. Now I am trying to tease her to avoid being retaliated by her. And Nangsuan looked at Yi Changji speechlessly. This guy was definitely ignorant. He didn't understand the meaning of his words at all. Forget about the happiness of such a person. Yi Changji was still talking enthusiastically. He looked at An Nangsuan and said seriously, second brother, I remember that Nayunia was 1 week old. We can't forget that girl. And Nangsuan has mixed feelings. Fu Ba always cherishes his life, he. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 52. Chapter 52 Chapter 52 My scalp is numb. Second brother, are you listening to me? Yi Changji waved his hand in front of him. And Nangsuan responded absently, yeah. Yi Changji frowned, dissatisfied with his nonchalant answer. Second brother, I know you don't care about that girl Nayuniu, but we can't favor one or the other. The palms and backs of our hands are full of flesh. We have to hold a bowl of water levelly. You can ask Nayuniu what she wants later, so that we can prepare it together. After talking to Du Xiongfen and knowing that the girl had such feelings for him, and Nangxuan's mood was quite complicated. Now that Yi Changji was here talking non-stop, it made him even more upset. Her voice couldn't help but rise. Ask yourself. I promised Aunt Du to keep a distance from Nayuniu. Damn, what kind of attitude are you having, brother? Don't you just know that Nayuniu likes you? Are you so irritable? I think that girl Nayuniu is very nice. She has been with us since she was a child. She is also well behaved. She is more than good enough for an old man like you. Aunt Du alone doesn't say that you two are engaged. In order to prevent you from becoming an older man, just accept Nayuniu calmly. And Nangxuan had a headache and wanted to tear out Yi Changji's mouth. He actually saw his own feelings clearly. He had just made it so clear about the boss's feelings for his childhood. Why didn't he react so quickly? This girl's IQ will you become 150 instantly when you get here? You don't understand even after I tell you. And Nangxuan put down the wine glass and left. Leaving Yi Changji alone is a bit cute. Fu Chenxiu smelled of wine and was mixed with the chill of the night. His hand with perfect finger bones gently turned the door lock. Crunch. There was a very soft sound of the door opening, and in the darkness, his deep eyes fell precisely on someone who was sleeping in a ball on the big bed, and his sleeping appearance was not good looking. He walked over slowly and softly, squatting on the edge of the bed, looking at the girl's pink face as she slept, with a soft light in her black eyes, and her long fingertips carefully traced the outline of the girl's face, showing nostalgia, tenderness, and infatuation. After a long time, his low-spirited and sentimental voice sounded in the darkness, "When I was a child, if my fifth uncle did the worst thing to you, would you hate my fifth uncle?" In the darkness, the only thing that responded to him was the shallow breathing of two people. Fu Chen's slender black eyelashes trembled, and his eyelids drooped slightly to cover the emotions in his eyes. Then the corners of his mouth curled up, and that suppressed voice sounded again, saying to himself, "It doesn't matter, even if you hate me, it doesn't matter, as long as you are by my side. Don't hate Uncle Wu." Speaking, the tall man, half bent, was close to the girl, and his thin lips were close to. Zhang Xiao woke up from a good night's sleep. In the dream, she left the male protagonist in this book and was living a leisurely life abroad, which was very uncomfortable. The only bad thing was that she felt a mosquito bit her in the middle of the night, but fortunately her dream was not ruined. I rubbed my hair, got up in a good mood, and prepared to dress myself up beautifully. When I saw a large purple patch on my neck in the mirror, Zhang Xiao was petrified on the spot, and then he felt chills all over his body. The chill extended from the soles of his feet to the top of his head, and he swallowed hard. Her whole scalp was numb, and she knew who had done it without even thinking about it. The next second she ran to the bathroom to check herself. There was nothing abnormal. She sat on the floor with a heavy sweat, and her heart was heavy. It seems the departure must be hastened. La la la, it's recommended online, friends, hurry up and vote. Thank you Strawberry Girl, I have longed for death since I was born, milk tea, orange and blue art, and a girl who purifies evil spirits. The taste of happiness, lotus mist, floating clouds, the young hero of Palace Master Jade Toad, Guardian, the Orioles, Demon, Wang Ji, Xian's recommendation votes. Good morning. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 53. Chapter 53 Forced to open for business. Zhang Xiao stayed in the bathroom for a long time before going to the dressing room to change clothes. He specially changed into a high-collared dress to cover the marks on his neck and went downstairs to have breakfast. Fu Chenxiao came downstairs after his morning run and washed up. He sat next to her and had breakfast with her, his dark eyes full of doting. Although Zhang Xiao was immersed in eating, she could still feel the boss's gaze on her. The gaze was too strong for her to ignore. Her appetite for food dropped, and she drank the white fungus soup intermittently. If the food doesn't taste good, ask Aunt Zhang to make it again for you. Fu Chenxiao's deep voice sounded suddenly. Zhang Xiao was startled, almost joking, and quickly finished the soup in his bowl. Uncle Wu, I'm going to school. Fu Chenxiao put down the coffee in his hand, raised his dark eyes and looked at Zhang Xiaoxi. The kind of person who just looks at you in silence is the most creepy thing. Zhang Xiaoxiao swallowed nervously and defended himself in fear. Uncle Wu, I'm really full. Fu Chenxiao looked at her, his brows furrowed slightly, his deep eyes narrowed slightly, making it difficult to see the emotions in his eyes. After a few seconds, a deep voice sounded, I'll take you to school. Oh, Zhang Xiao responded dully. In the car, Zhang Xiao looked sideways at the scene outside the car window, trying to keep a distance from the boss to avoid unnecessary trouble. Fu Chenxiao has been talking on the phone since he got in the car. The content on the phone is not something she can understand because it is all in a foreign language from a certain country. When the car was approaching school, Fu Chenxiao finished his phone call and turned to look at someone who was keeping a distance from him. He frowned slightly and his face became a little darker. Hello, what do you want for your birthday? Zhang Xiao looked back at him in confusion, and then realized that Miss Baiyu Eguang will be 18 years old in a month. The boss holds a birthday party for her every year, and this year is probably no exception. She thought about her answer. Uncle Wu, I like whatever you give me. Fu Chenxiao's lips turned up almost visibly, and he smiled lowly. Uncle Yi asked me to ask you what you want for your birthday. He's ready. Zhang Xiao. She wants freedom, so can she give it to her? Of course, you can't say what's on your mind. It will be all right. Fu Chenxiao looked at her softly. There's still 1 month left, think about it slowly. Okay. After Zhang Xiao finished answering, he arrived at school just in time. Zhang Xiaoxiao wanted to open the car door and leave immediately, but the boss was still around, so he was forced to open the business. He looked at Fu Chenxiao with a smile on his face. Uncle Fifth, I'm here. Zhang Xiaoxi. What do you mean by Can I walk or can't I walk? Uncle Wu, I'll get off the car then. Fu Chenxiao looked at her with cold eyes, and the depressing atmosphere floated in the air again. Zhang Xiaoxiao's heart skipped a beat, wondering why the boss was angry again. He quickly recalled what Baiyu Eguang did after the boss sent Baiyu Eguang to school. When Baiyu Eguang was young, he kissed the big boss and said goodbye. When he grew up, he... Thinking about it, Zhang Shi felt goosebumps all over his body, but he had to do it, so he could only grit his teeth and endure it. Following Baiyu Eguang's example, he stretched out his little hand to hold the boss's arm, and leaned towards him like a cute pet. The corners of his mouth curved, and his voice was soft. Uncle Wu, you have to pick me up after school. Sure enough, as soon as these words came out, the aura around someone changed, and he reached out and touched her hair. Well, I'll pick you up after school. Zhang Xiaoxiao. What a sin. Don't pick me up, I don't need you to pick me up. Zhang Xiaozhen, you are committing evil. She wants to stay away from the boss. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 54. Chapter 54 It's over and you're showing off your waistcoat. Zhang Xiao sat in her seat and sighed for the nth time. Her two faint eyebrows never loosened. She kept thinking that she couldn't change Baiyu Egwang's relationship with the boss at once without changing herself. I don't know how long we will be forced to stay open, what should I do? She was so irritated that she wanted to run away. There was no news from Fuyan yet, and she couldn't urge him. But the boss's obsession with her was already so morbid, there was no guarantee that it would be ended that day. Think about it, she is still 11. Although you got full marks in the exam, you still have to give the teacher some face. Lao Niu has looked at you many times. Chu Hanyu cradled Zhang Xiao with his hand. Zhang Xiao looked at her sadly. Hanyu, I want to eat spicy strips. Chu Hanyu. Classmate Zhang Xiao, come up and answer this question. Niu Jiang couldn't bear it anymore. Although this person with no classroom discipline is a good prospect, he can't be so blatant in making guesses in class, when he is a teacher. It's a decoration. Zhang Xiaoxia frowned slightly and squinted at the questions on the blackboard. He stood up and stepped forward, picked up the chalk and started to solve the problems. The chalk was consumed quickly on the blackboard. After 10 minutes, the entire blackboard was filled with writing. Teacher, I have written down all the solutions I know. Also, teacher, you have a decimal point wrong, so I will help you correct it. Niu Jiang. Everybody. When Zhang Xiao returned to his seat, there was already a pack of spicy strips in the drawer, and then Chu Hanyu's voice rang in his ears, Brother Zhang, this is my filial piety to you. Please give me more extra lessons in the future. Zhang Shi. Ahem. Niu Jiang coughed twice to avoid embarrassment, and looked at Zhang Xiao who was secretly eating spicy strips, feeling both love and hate in his heart. Zhang Xiaoxi's problem-solving ideas are very good. Please take a look below. Xiao, big brother, I will make your spicy sticks from now on. I beg you to teach me how to become a great god. Chu Hanyu held a pile of colorful spicy sticks and placed them in front of Zhang Xiaoxi. He had the expression of a master begging to be accepted as his disciple. Zhang Xiao's mouth twitched. A great is not someone with your level of intelligence that you can blaspheme about. Chu Hanyu. Zhang was just like petting his own dog when he was a child. He patted her head and sighed, God and Pikey are not on the same level. It's good that you know this. Chu Hanyu. Who is Pikey? Sir, do you want to go see that woman with me this afternoon? Chu Hanyu couldn't understand the meaning of her words, so he simply didn't understand. Is she awake already? Go, I'll go. Zhang Xiaoxio's heart felt cold when he thought that the boss was coming to pick him up. He quickly changed his mind, I'm not going. You just put her in a good place and find someone to watch over her and don't let her leave. Seeing that she was not in a high mood, Chu Hanyu asked with concern, Xiao, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? Fifth uncle, you are coming to pick me up from school. When Zhang Xiao said the boss, his whole body felt as if his energy had been drained away, and he had no energy. Child, why do I feel that you are afraid of Uncle Fu Wu lately? I've always been afraid of her, Zhang Xiao replied. Chu Hanyu frowned and analyzed, when you were young, although you were afraid of Uncle Fu, your eyes would shine every time Uncle Fu came to pick you up from school. Now you. Zhang Xiaoxio's heart skipped a beat. It's time to show off your waistcoat. Thank you 11, the taste of happiness, I have a name that is extremely emotional, stubborn, am I pretty? Am I pretty? Boziaju, recommended vote in Korean. And that baby has a recommendation vote in his hand, vote for it? Refill. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. You were lucky enough to escape. Hee hee. I've always been afraid of Uncle Wu. Zhang Xiaoxi was ready to get rid of this topic. This girl was possessed by Conan, and her observations were so subtle. Chu Hanyu looked at her with wide-open deer eyes, and his crystal-clear eyes made it unnatural to lie to her. Hanyu, don't you think Uncle Wu disciplines me like that? He's a bit too strict. I'm already 18 and you're not allowed to fall in love in order to convince her. Zhang Xiaoxiao pouted his mouth high to show I am really dissatisfied with Fu Chenxiu. Chu Hanyu frowned and had a serious face. When you were young, you'd better not anger Uncle Fu Wu. You were lucky enough to escape what happened to Yanian. If not, maybe, anyway, when you were young, you had to remember that Uncle Fu Wu had different feelings for you. Of course Zhang Xiaoxiao knew what she meant, but now that she was by Yu Guang, she could only pretend to be dumb and replied, I know that Uncle Wu has different feelings for me. You know. Chu Hanyu basically exclaimed, his dark eyes full of surprise. Of course I know. I was raised by my fifth uncle. We have been together for 10 years, so the relationship is naturally different. But I also hope that my fifth uncle will not discipline me so harshly. I thought. Chu Hanyu put away her surprised expression. She thought Zhang Xiaoxiao knew that Fu Chenxiu liked her, but it seemed that he didn't know. Forget about Uncle Fu Wu, please tell me the questions when I'm young. I have to get good grades no matter what, otherwise I will go home and inherit hundreds of millions of family assets. Chu Hanyu handed the paper to Zhang Xiaoxiao. Zhang Xiao, I also want to go home and inherit hundreds of millions of family assets. Chu Hanyu went to the hospital with 2 bodyguards after school, paid all the expenses, and came to the ward. The woman was wearing a large hospital gown and looking out the window, with a melancholy and hazy beauty. Chu Hanyu walked towards her. When the woman heard the footsteps, she turned to look at her. Chu Hanyu froze on the spot, her mouth slightly opened, and she almost blurted out, when I was young. But she swallowed it back. The woman in front of me, that day when she was in a coma with her eyes closed, looked like she was 5 minutes younger than when she was a child. Now that she opens her eyes, she looks like she was 8 minutes younger. Her eyes are round eyes with clear black and white, and the ends of her eyes are slightly slanted. The upper hook is pure and caressing the girl's eyebrows. However, there is still a difference between the two. The person in front of me is a little white flower, melancholy, and evokes a desire for protection. Then Zhang Xiao is a sunflower, enthusiastic, cheerful, and has the kind of temperament cultivated by Fu Chen. The temperament of Tsundere Xiao Gongju is completely different. You saved me. Little Beiwa spoke, her voice was thin and soft, making it sound like she wanted to bully. Chu Hanyu didn't like it, so he didn't smile, and his voice was cold and hard, I didn't save you, I bought you. Now you are my private property, and now I want to take you away. Little Beiwa's eyes were slightly red, and a desperate and sad smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I understand, I'll go with you. Chu Hanyu knitted his brows together and moved his fingers. 2 bodyguards stood in front of the woman. One of them was holding new clothes. Miss, put your clothes on and I will carry you down. Okay. Xiao Beiwa's face was pale and bloodless. He looked at the 2 bodyguards weakly and timidly, and slowly put on his coat. Chu Hanyu brought Xiao Beiwa to her apartment. After changing the keys for n times, she still hadn't opened her apartment. She suspected that she had taken the wrong key, and her temper became grumpy again. She said to the bodyguard, you find a locksmith? Yes. The bodyguard left, and Chu Hanyu looked at Xiao Beiwa indifferently. May I have your name? Mo Zhangxiang. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. 56 people are stupid and have too much money. Mo Zhangxiang, Chu Hanyu repeated her name and asked, do you have any brothers and sisters? No. Mo Zhangxiang leaned against the wall without much energy. After the simple conversation, the corridor fell into silence, and the atmosphere was subtle. Mo Zhangxiang broke the silence. Why do you want to buy me? Chu Hanyu answered her casually, foolish people have a lot of money. Mo Zhangxiang. Chu Hanyu thought to Zhang Ziashi, isn't the little princess stupid and rich? When buying a woman, just like Yu Yi Yang said, it's about looking or eating. The answer is neither. The door opened, and a familiar figure appeared in front of Chu Hanyu. Na Yuniu, what were you doing here when you were young? Zhao Huiyan looked at them in surprise. Chu Hanyu curled his lips, looked at him, and sarcastically said, Uncle Zhao, if your eyes are blurry, go get a pair of glasses. You weren't here when you were young. Zhao Huiyan then carefully looked at the person leaning against the wall, narrowed her phoenix eyes, and said with interest, you're really not a kid, Na Yuniu, if you want to use any big moves, you have to add Uncle Zhao. Chu Hanyu rolled his eyes at him and rarely spoke to him, Uncle Zhao, if you have nothing to do, you can leave. Zhao Huiyan. All of them have such a big temper. Old Zhao, you still have your passport. And Nangxuan said in his throat. When his eyes fell on a certain woman, his eyes evaded unnaturally. He was embarrassed and didn't know how to face it. Chu Hanyu's eyes lit up when she saw him. She stuck to him and arched her eyebrows, and Xiaoxian, why didn't you reply to my message at home? What are you and Uncle Zhao doing that is shameful? Speaking, his eyes wandered back and forth between the two of them day by day. Zhao Huiyan's eyes twitched on the spot, feeling uncomfortable being stared at by her. Na Yuniu, I'm not interested in your child adoptive husband. And Nangxuan. Zhao Huiyan, can you speak? If you can't speak, just shut up. Chu Hanyu was very happy when he heard this title. Na Yuniu, what are you doing here? And Nangxuan looked at her sideways. Chu Hanyu grinned, I'll put my 10 million vases. Ananxian. Zhao Huiyan. 10 million vase Mo Zhangxiang. Na Yuniu, don't say that you spent 10 million on the hour and bought a high imitation of the hour, Zhao Huiyan said in pain. Chu Hanyu nodded, yeah, it looks good. Zhao Huiyan. These two prodigal little ancestors. And Nangxuan frowned and looked at Mo Zhangxiang, his eyelids were pressed down, Danfan's eyes darkened a bit, and his voice was low, Na Yuniu, I told you not to get involved in their affairs when we were young, right? Why don't you listen to me now? I bought it when I was young, and I didn't pay a penny. And Xiaoxian has nothing to do with me. I'm just responsible for taking care of it, Chu Hanyu explained. And Nangxuan was silent for a few seconds and then said, Na Yuniu, tell me if there is anything unusual during the hour. You know, I care more about hours than you do. Zhang was picked up from school by Fu Chenexai when she was young. When she went to the big boss to help her with her homework, she was highly nervous the whole time. She seriously suspected that the big boss had taken the wrong medicine. She felt that the big boss just went through the process of getting along with Bai Yueguang. Terrible. She was afraid that if the details were incorrect, the boss would find out and she would lose her vest. Now that she finally returned to the room, she felt relaxed. She lay motionless on the bed like a dead dog. She sniffed her quilt with the tip of her nose. Slowly, she felt something was wrong and her whole body began to itch. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 57. Chapter 57 Chapter 57 Osman Thus Allergy. Zombie Fraud System. Host, your life is in danger now, please pay attention. Zhang Xiao felt itchy all over his body, his face was red from being scratched by himself, and he had difficulty breathing. Is this body allergic to something? System, yes, your entire room is now an allergen, and the host will faint after a while. Zhang Xiao curled up into a ball, his consciousness began to collapse, and he tried desperately to stand up. After struggling several times, he finally got off the bed, but he still couldn't stand up straight. Lost consciousness on the ground. System, host, wake up quickly, or you will die. Jiangxi, has no consciousness. System, host, you can't die, if you die, I won't be promoted. Jiangxi. System, after all, your performance is really not up to standard, so you need to save yourself quickly. The system opened its own plug-in system, drifted into Fujinexiu's dream, and conveyed the phenomenon of the room to Fujinexiu. Main system, no 003, you violated the regulations, and your performance will be deducted this month. System, who is cheating it behind the scenes? This plugin has been used to help countless hosts for many years without any problems. Who is cheating on it behind the scenes? Fujinexiu woke up from his dream, his forehead was covered with dense cold sweat, his face was gloomy and tense, and he opened the door of Zhang Shishi's room as quickly as a cheetah. When he saw Zhang Xiaoxiao lying on the ground with weak breathing, his eyes were full of panic, and a gleam of white appeared on his gloomy handsome face. He stepped forward with his long legs and hugged Zhang Xiaoxiao's light body, turned around and ran out the door. Comprehensive Private Hospital. Guanyang pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, glanced at someone with a slightly pale face, and said, "When I was a kid, you knew you were allergic to Osman thus. How could you make such a stupid mistake? When will she wake up?" This allergic reaction lasted too long. She almost died. When she wakes up to see herself, it shouldn't take more than 5 hours, but she will need to be hospitalized for at least a week. That sentence almost cost someone his life. It hit someone hard in the heart, and the lines on his face became tense. Guanyang wouldn't put a knife in someone's heart. He closed the case and simply said, "She may make noises when she wakes up. You have to tell her that this is normal." Fujinexiu nodded expressionlessly. After Guanyang left, Fujinexiu sat beside the hospital bed, looking at the dense red rash on Zhang Xiaoxi's face and his pale and bloodless lips. His dark eyes were full of self-blame and guilt. "Xiaoxi, my fifth uncle didn't protect you well." Jiangxi was completely woken up by the system. System, host, all my achievements are gone for you. System, oh, host, wake up quickly and help impact performance. System, host, I paid a huge price for you and you must compensate me. Zhang Xiao woke up after being so noisy by him. As soon as she opened her eyes, what came into view was Fujinexiu's handsome face. The only thing that seemed wrong was that this handsome face was a little haggard. She opened her mouth, wanting to call her, but found that she couldn't make a sound, and suddenly looked at him with wide eyes in panic. Fujinexiu comforted him in a deep voice, "You are allergic. Your allergic throat is swollen and you can't make a sound for the time being. Don't worry." After hearing what he said, Jiangxi's heart was relieved. The system of claiming credit by pretending to be dead, "Host, I saved you, you have to thank me. If you didn't use the cheat, you would definitely die. Zhang Xiao, I want you to save me." System. Thank you for looking at your place. 854-527, Protection, The Taste of Happiness, the young hero of Jade Toad Palace, Floating Clouds, I have a name that is beyond emotion, Korean symbols, Won, Lotus Mist, Broken Bridge Mist, please give me advice for the rest of my life. Nan 11, am I pretty? Am I pretty? I have been yearning for death since I was born. I recommend tickets for the way of reading. Don't keep your tickets, give them to your baby. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 58. Chapter 58. Chapter 58. Agreed. Jiangxi, you have the kindness to ask me for credit, aren't you a reminder system? I'm near dead, and you reminded me, it's better not to remind me, you're a waste. System, a heartless woman, she would have died long ago if he had not cheated on her. Zhang Xiao, if you keep fooling around and disturbing my sleep, I will never wake up. System, how come I accepted such a woman? Who did I offend? Are you still feeling uncomfortable? Fu Chenxiao looked at her bloodless face and asked worriedly. The boss spoke up. Zhang Xiao had not been talking to the system. She looked at the boss pitifully and scratched her face with her hands. She was not being pretentious, but her face was really itchy. Fu Chenxiao grabbed her wrist, feeling extremely distressed, and gently coaxed her, when you were little, you would have scars if you were patient and patient. Zhang Xiao pursed his white and dry lips and looked at Fu Chenxiao aggrievedly. His appearance was extremely pitiful. Fu Chenxiao couldn't bear to look at her small appearance, and gently scratched the skin on her face and hands. Be good, close your eyes and sleep and it will stop itching. His voice seemed to be under a spell. Zhang Xiao closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. The corners of Fu Chenxiao's lips were slightly raised, and he looked at Zhang Xiaoxi who had closed his eyes so gentle that they could overflow with water. He lowered his head slightly, and kissed the back of her hand with his thin cold lips. Sleep well, my baby. At noon on the second day after Zhang Xiao was admitted to the hospital, the ward was full of people. Mr. Fu looked at Zhang Xiao with a distressed expression. Xiao Xiao, please go back to your old house with Grandpa so that I can rest assured. Facing the old man's concern, Zhang Xiao felt warm in her heart, but the old man's suggestion was a very good one. Without Yumenya, she could go back to her old house to live for a while and keep her distance from the boss, Grandpa. Zhang Xiaoxi hesitated and glanced at the boss who was squeezed into the corner. The old man is so smart that he can understand what is going on at a glance. When you were young, your fifth uncle had no shame in leaving you. Look, he has taken care of you for 10 years. Don't you know that you are allergic to Osman thus? I'm afraid of you. If you follow him, you will really lose your life. I will go back to my old house with my grandfather. If anyone stops me this time, I will break his legs. Fu Chenxiao. Is this his biological father? I want to break my son's legs. It's decided, you and Grandpa will go back to the old house. The master made the decision like this. Zhang Xiaoxiao glanced at the boss nervously. He still had that paralyzed face. The most surprising thing was that he didn't object. This made Zhang Xiaoxi feel a little excited. Go to Grandpa's house to stay for 2 days, and then I'll pick you up. The boss's low-pitched voice sounded. Zhang Xiaoxiao. She was confused. She must have gotten lucky today. Did you hear me right? The boss actually agreed. Snort. Mr. Fu snorted in a low voice. Some people are quite sensible. Fu Chenxiao. Mr. Fu and the others stayed in the ward for a while and then left. After sending the old man away, Mr. Fu came back with gentleness in his eyes. He touched Zhang Xiaoxi's head and said in a doting and helpless voice, I know you are blaming Uncle Wu. I'm angry with Uncle Wu for not protecting you, but I'll allow you to stay at Grandpa's house for at most 2 days. Zhang Xiao's excited heart was suddenly splashed with cold water, which made her feel so cold. She had originally thought of staying there for at least a week. Sure enough, your father is still your father, and the boss can see through her little thoughts at a glance. Good morning. Thank you, Twilight, look at you. I have been yearning for death since I was born. I have a recommendation ticket with an indescribable emotional name. I have a very affectionate name. The baby is so cute that I don't want it. I open it early every day and I love you. The refill. New day recommendation votes, collections, 5-star reviews, and activity are all active. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 59. Chapter 59 Grievance. Zhang Xiaoxiao twisted her head slightly to prevent the boss from touching her head. She pouted her little mouth and shrank into the bed, ignoring the boss. Fu Chenxiao frowned slightly, looked at someone who was huddled up, and said in a gentle voice, "Young kid, be good and don't make trouble." When Zhang Xiao heard what the boss said, she felt even more unhappy, depressed, and a little aggrieved. Her eyes also turned red. She had never been allergic to any food, and now this feeling made her feel like she was living like someone else. "I feel tired, aggrieved, and sad. The biggest fear is the future." Miss Bai Yueguang is a supporting character who only lived for 3 chapters. She is not included in the subsequent plot at all. Now that she has survived, she is confused about what to do next. There were small sobs inside the quilt. Fu Chenxiao's eyes darkened and he lifted the quilt. When he saw the trembling body, his handsome face turned gloomy. He stretched out his hand to touch someone's face, and looked into her eyes deeply. "Why are you crying? Do you really not want to live with Uncle Wu so much?" Zhang Xiao looked at her, his round black eyes were full of mist, and the tip of his nose was red. He felt terribly wronged, and shouted in a hoarse voice filled with tears, "I just want to stay at Grandpa's house for 2 more days. Why, I'm not allowed to go." Zhang Xiaoxiao had a swollen throat, so when he roared like this, his voice broke instantly. His face turned red, and tears rolled down his cheeks and fell on Fu Chenxiao's hand. Warm tears burned the back of Fu Chenxiao's hands. His dark eyes shrank, he bent down and pressed his thin, cool lips on Zhang Xiaoxi's lips. Domineering, nostalgic. Zhang Xiaoxiao suddenly widened his eyes, his long eyelashes trembling slightly, and his whole body was stunned. He could only hear his own beating heartbeat. Fu Chenxiao kissed her for a few seconds before leaving her lips. His long and clean fingers covered her little face, his deep eyes stared at her, and his voice was hoarse, "When you are young, please don't force Uncle Wu." Zhang Xiao's mind went blank. The boss's eyes were like a whirlpool in the deep sea, sucking her in and making her unable to think. The boss's words even made her heart tremble. Fu Chenxiao looked at her dumbfounded face with his thin lips, lowered his head and pecked her forehead. "As long as you are obedient, Uncle Wu will give you everything he has when you are little." Zhang Xiao, who had run away from home at this time, returned home. With the reaction that a normal person should have, he pushed Fu Chenxiao away fiercely, his pale lips trembling uncontrollably. "Uncle Wu." Zhang Xiao coughed violently, and a ball of blood-streaked phlegm fell on the quilt. Fu Chenxiao's dark eyes flashed, and he pressed the bedside bell. His voice was horribly deep, "Child, do you want Uncle Wu to die?" Zhang Xiao's small body trembled, and she looked at the boss's profile from the corner of her eye. The boss's profile was tense and his cheeks were bulging. He was clenching his back molars and did not look at his face. You can all be sure how angry the boss is right now. Because every word I just said was squeezed out from between my teeth. Gloomy, scary. Zhang Xiao curled up his small body weakly, out of fear. Guanyang rushed to the ward in a hurry. When he entered, he felt that the atmosphere in the ward was not right, and he frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" "I'm vomiting blood." Fu Chenxiao's voice was deep. Guanyang narrowed his eyelids slightly and looked at Zhang Xiaoxiao. With his sharp eyes, he found blood streaks on the quilt and walked over. Open your mouth." "Thank you Liulai Yingluo, guardian, for your recommendation vote. I have always suspected that I am playing solo. Don't the babies like Uncle Fu? Woo woo woo." End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 60. Chapter 60 Angry. Zhang Xiaoxi didn't cooperate at all, burying his head and not raising it up. Guanyang frowned slightly and looked at Zhang Shi, who was unwilling to cooperate. "Be obedient when I'm a kid. Let Uncle Guan take a look at your throat. Zhang remained motionless when he was young, and even thought of forgetting about being mute. Guan Yang looked helplessly at the gloomy Fu Chenxiao next to him and asked him to find a way. After all, Zhang Xiaoxiao had listened to him the most since he was a child. Fu Chenxiao stared at Zhang Xiaoxi with emotionless expression on his face. His attitude was tough and he had an unbreakable intention. Zhang Xiao, raise your head. Zhang Xiaoxiao's heart trembled slightly when he heard the boss's voice. He instinctively hugged his body tightly, his little face tensed up, and he didn't even raise his head. Guan Yang frowned and looked at Fu Chenxiao, his eyes moved slightly to signal him not to be so fierce. Zhang Xiao's attitude completely angered someone. Boom! There was a loud noise next to Zhang Xiao's bed. Zhang Xiao's little face, which was buried in front of the murderer, instantly turned pale, and his back and neck became tense. Guan Yang was also startled, and reflexively looked at the place where the noise came from. The small cabinet next to the hospital bed was dented by the kick, which showed how strong someone was. Then someone's suppressed voice became muffled, "Do you need me to do it?" Zhang Xiao bit his lip, his face turned pale, he raised his head stubbornly, his eyes were red, not to mention how pitiful he looked, which made Guan Yang feel heartbroken. After all, he was also their spoiled child, and he really couldn't bear to see it. Looking at her like this, resisting someone's high-pressure gaze, he comforted her, "When you are young, don't risk your body, it's not worth it." Zhang Xiao's tears fell silently down her cheeks. Today she was determined to challenge the boss. She is not Baiyu Eguang and will not listen to him for everything. She yearns for freedom, not to be restrained by others, even her own father. Her mother didn't control her like this, so why should he? And why should he kiss him? Although he and Baiyu Eguang have no blood relationship in the book, outsiders know that their relationship is as close as family. What he just said was a mess of ethics. Okay, stop crying, open your mouth and let Uncle Guan take a look, Guan Yang coaxed. Zhang Xiaoxi felt really aggrieved, and he couldn't control his emotions at all. Zhang Xiaoxi fiercely pulled out the needle in his hand, like an agile kitten, scurrying out of bed with just a scratch. He ran out of the ward as fast as he could. Zhang Hanyu's move was not reacted by both Guan Yang and Fu Chenxiao. When the two reacted, Zhang Hanyu had already ran to the elevator. Fu Chenxiao reacted the fastest, with a dark handsome face, and ran out to chase someone. Zhang Xiaoxiao saw Fu Chenxiao chasing him out, abandoned the elevator and ran towards the stairs, running very fast with bare feet, running forward as frantically as if he was risking his life. Fu Chenxiao looked at someone stumbling in front of him, his heart was trembling, his long eyebrows were twisted into a deep groove, and his whole body was exuding a chilling coldness. Zhang Xiao was very afraid that the boss would catch up, so he ran with his head covered. He was about to reach the rooftop with no way out, when a force of gravity fell on his waist, and then he fell into a hard chest. A low voice hit my ears, "Zhang Xiaoxiao, if you want my life, you can take it now." Zhang Xiao was breathing heavily, and her voice was so hoarse that it was hard to hear what she was saying. "I don't want your life, I just want to be alone, somewhere without you." Fu Chenxiao's dark eyes were full of panic. Did his actions just now really scare her? But this relationship will be broken sooner or later. He can't wait until she is 18, and she is resisting him now. What should I do? Lala, I went to play skewers tonight, there should be another chapter, hee hee. End of this chapter.